The first time I heard the guttural growl of ATV engines ripping through the back 40, I thought it was some lost tourists, maybe a bunch of city folks who'd taken a wrong turn off the main trail and stumbled onto my land. But then I saw her.
Karen.
Perched atop a gleaming four-wheeler like some suburban Cleopatra, her designer sunglasses glinting in the morning sun, her manicured fingers wrapped around the handles like she owned the place. And behind her, a convoy of equally clueless weekend warriors, their laughter cutting through the quiet like a chainsaw through butter. I dropped my coffee mug right there in the dirt. This was bold. This was next-level entitlement. And this was war. I marched toward them, my boots kicking up dust, my blood pressure doing somersaults. Karen didn't even have the decency to look guilty. Instead, she revved the engine, like some kind of power move, and flashed me a smile so fake it could have been sold at Walmart. "Hey there, neighbor," she chirped, as if we were old pals. "Mind if we cut through? The HOA trail's all muddy after the rain." The nerve. The absolute audacity. I could have choked on my own rage. "Mind," I spat. "Lady, you're already cutting through. On private property." She blinked, slow and unbothered, like I just told her the sky was blue. "Oh, don't be so dramatic," she sighed, waving a hand like she was shooing a fly. "It's just dirt. We're not hurting anything." Not hurting anything? My jaw clenched so tight I could have cracked a walnut. The ruts their tires left would take weeks to smooth out. My cattle were spooked, milling at the far end of the pasture like they'd seen the devil himself. And the noise, God, the noise was like a jackhammer to my sanity. But Karen was already shifting gears, her posse giggling behind her. "We'll be out of your hair in 10 minutes, she called over her shoulder, as if that made it okay. As if permission was something she could retroactively grant herself. I stood there, fists balled, watching them tear across my land like it was their personal playground. And that's when I knew Karen didn't need a warning. She needed a lesson. One she wouldn't forget. One that'd stick to her like the stench of a pigsty in July. Oh, this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The first time I heard the guttural growl of ATV engines ripping through the back 40, I thought it was some lost tourists, maybe a bunch of city folks who'd taken a wrong turn off the main trail and stumbled onto my land. But then I saw her.
Karen.
Perched atop a gleaming four-wheeler like some suburban Cleopatra, her designer sunglasses glinting in the morning sun, her manicured fingers wrapped around the handles like she owned the place. And behind her, a convoy of equally clueless weekend warriors, their laughter cutting through the quiet like a chainsaw through butter. I dropped my coffee mug right there in the dirt. This was bold. This was next-level entitlement. And this was war. I marched toward them, my boots kicking up dust, my blood pressure doing somersaults. Karen didn't even have the decency to look guilty. Instead, she revved the engine, like some kind of power move, and flashed me a smile so fake it could have been sold at Walmart. "Hey there, neighbor," she chirped, as if we were old pals. "Mind if we cut through? The HOA trail's all muddy after the rain." The nerve. The absolute audacity. I could have choked on my own rage. "Mind," I spat. "Lady, you're already cutting through. On private property." She blinked, slow and unbothered, like I just told her the sky was blue. "Oh, don't be so dramatic," she sighed, waving a hand like she was shooing a fly. "It's just dirt. We're not hurting anything." Not hurting anything? My jaw clenched so tight I could have cracked a walnut. The ruts their tires left would take weeks to smooth out. My cattle were spooked, milling at the far end of the pasture like they'd seen the devil himself. And the noise, God, the noise was like a jackhammer to my sanity. But Karen was already shifting gears, her posse giggling behind her. "We'll be out of your hair in 10 minutes, she called over her shoulder, as if that made it okay. As if permission was something she could retroactively grant herself. I stood there, fists balled, watching them tear across my land like it was their personal playground. And that's when I knew Karen didn't need a warning. She needed a lesson. One she wouldn't forget. One that'd stick to her like the stench of a pigsty in July. Oh, this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. You'd think after getting caught red-handed tearing up my land, Karen would have slunk back to her McMansion with at least a shred of shame. But no, this woman had the audacity to flip the script like some kind of suburban Houdini. 2 days after the ATV incident, I got a certified letter from the HOA. Not a warning to her about trespassing, oh no, a complaint against me for creating a hostile environment. I actually laughed out loud when I read it, a bitter, disbelieving sound that scared my dog off the porch. According to Karen's twisted version of events, I was the aggressor. Apparently, my threatening demeanor and unreasonable refusal to share community resources had left her feeling unsafe. Unfreaking believable. The letter demanded I attend a hearing to resolve the matter amicably, or face potential fines for disrupting neighborhood harmony. That's when I knew Karen wasn't just entitled. She was a full-blown chess player in this game of suburban warfare, and she'd just made her opening move. I showed up to that HOA meeting armed with security footage, property maps, and the kind of simmering rage that makes your eye twitch. The boardroom smelled like stale coffee and cheap perfume, and there sat Karen at the center of it all, holding court like Queen Bee in a pastel pantsuit. She'd brought reinforcements, 3 other women who kept nodding sympathetically every time she dabbed at her dry eyes with a tissue. I just don't understand why he has to be so territorial, she sniffed, voice trembling with practiced vulnerability. We're all neighbors here. Shouldn't we share God's green earth? The board members, a mix of retired busybodies and wannabe politicians, leaned forward like she was preaching gospel. That's when I slammed my folder down on the table hard enough to make the water glasses jump. Let me get this straight, I said, my voice dangerously calm. She trespasses, destroys my property, then runs to you playing victim, and you're actually entertaining this? The room went dead silent. I threw the security footage up on the screen, Karen and her crew doing donuts in my north pasture, laughing while their ATVs chewed up the grass. I passed around photos of the deep ruts left behind, the broken fence line my cattle nearly escaped through. Then I dropped the mic, county land records proving the trail was 200 feet inside my property line. The board chair, a prune-faced man named Gerald, started sweating visibly. Well, technically, he stammered, the HOA bylaws do encourage goodwill among neighbors. That's when Karen pulled her masterstroke. With tears shimmering like she'd won an Oscar, she whispered, I just wanted the kids to have somewhere to ride. It's so hard finding safe spaces these days. Boom. 3 board members melted on the spot. Never mind that Karen's kids were grown-ass adults with trust funds. The room erupted into murmurs about compromise and community spirit. I realized then that logic wouldn't win this battle. Karen had weaponized her privilege too well. So I did the only thing left. I played my trump card. Fine, I said, standing so suddenly my chair screeched. You want a community trail? I'll give you a trail. The way Karen's smug smile faltered? Priceless. She knew, somehow she knew, she'd just outsmarted herself. Because what I didn't say in that meeting. My pigs had just finished their new pen, right along the old ATV path. The moment I walked out of that HOA meeting, my mind was already spinning with blueprints for the most beautiful petty revenge this side of the Mississippi. See, I'd been planning to expand my pig pen anyway. Bessie and the girls had outgrown their current setup, and with the new litter of piglets coming in, I needed more space. Funny how fate works, isn't it? Because the perfect spot for expansion just happened to be right along the exact stretch of land Karen and her merry band of trespassers loved so much. I'm not saying it was divine intervention, but if the good Lord himself had ascended from the heavens with a shovel and said, "Make it stinky, my child," I couldn't have been more inspired. First things first, I needed to make this look legit. No half-hearted mud puddle would do. This needed to be a masterpiece of porcine real estate. I called up my buddy Dave, who owed me a favor after that incident with his runaway bull last spring, and within hours we were out there with post-hole diggers and a truckload of hog wire. "You're really gonna do this, huh?" Dave asked, wiping sweat off his brow as we sunk the first post. I just grinned and tossed him another beer. "Dave, my man, this isn't just fencing. This is performance art. We worked from dawn till dusk, shifting the boundary lines just enough that the old ATV trail now cuts straight through the heart of the new pig territory. I even added some special touches. A nice deep wallow where the trail used to be the flattest, perfect for maximum splash potential, and a feeding trough positioned strategically where riders would have to slow down to navigate around it. The piece de resistance? A brand new sign at the property line that read, "Trespassers will be pig food," in cheerful red letters. Subtlety is for people who don't have to clean mud out of their boot treads. By day 3, the transformation was complete. The pigs, bless their filthy little hearts, had already taken to their new digs with gusto. Bessie, my 400-pound Berkshire queen, had claimed the wallow like it was her personal spa, while the younger hogs turned the approach path into a minefield of hoof prints and other organic decorations. The smell? Let's just say it hit you like a freight train carrying a cargo of rotten eggs and regret. It was perfect. All I had to do now was wait. And oh, how sweet that waiting was. Every morning I'd sip my coffee on the porch, eyes glued to the trailhead like a kid counting down to Christmas. Then, on the 5th day, I heard it. The distant whine of engines, the crunch of gravel under tires, and, glory hallelujah, Karen's distinctive cackle cutting through the morning air. Showtime. I'll admit, I almost felt bad when I saw them round the bend. Almost. There were 6 of them this time, Karen in the lead, of course, followed by what I can only describe as her step-forward wives' ATV brigade. They didn't even slow down at the property line, just blasted right past my new sign like it was part of the scenery. Karen actually waved at me as they passed the house, her grin wide and shameless. That's when the first rider hit the wallow. The sound was something between a scream and a trombone fart as his ATV plowed into 2 feet of liquefied pig bliss, sending up a brown geyser that rained down on the entire group. Karen's pristine white riding jacket became abstract art in real time. The pigs, startled by the commotion, went into full chaos mode, squealing, charging, slipping, and sliding in the mud like furry little wrecking balls. One particularly bold hog named Truffles took a liking to Karen's shiny bumper, gnawing on it with the enthusiasm of a toddler with a new teething toy. The best part? I had it all on camera. Every glorious second, from the initial splash to Karen's shoe getting suctioned off in the muck as she tried to flee. I may have overdone it with the zoom-ins on her face, a palette of emotions ranging from shock to disgust to sheer existential despair. But hey, revenge is a dish best served with high-definition playback. By the time they'd limped back to the trailhead, their machines coughing mud from their exhaust pipes, I was leaning on the fence with my most innocent expression. "Y'all all right?" I called out. "Looks like you took a wrong turn somewhere." Karen didn't even look back, just held up a middle finger slick with pig slobber as her crew sputtered away. And that's when I knew, no HOA hearing, no fine, no amount of fake tears could undo this. Some lessons need to be felt to be learned. And buddy, with the way that stench clung to everything, Karen would be feeling this one for weeks. The stench of victory hung in the air for days, literally. You could track Karen's movements around town just by following the faint aroma of Oda pigsty that clung to her like a bad decision. I heard from the cashier at the Piggly Wiggly that she'd abandoned a full cart of groceries when someone in the dairy aisle gagged and loudly asked, "What died?" But the real fireworks started when Karen, still reeking of humiliation and hog wallow, marched into the next HOA meeting with a vengeance that could have powered a small city. This time, she wasn't playing the delicate victim. Oh no. This was full-blown Karen unleashed, eyes wild, voice shrill enough to shatter glass, and a PowerPoint presentation titled "Agricultural Terrorism in Our Backyards" that she'd clearly stayed up all night making. The first slide was a close-up of her ruined $1,500 riding boots caked in what I can only describe as mud plus. "This," she hissed, jabbing a manicured finger at the screen, "is what happens when we allow livestock vigilantes to run amok." The room, packed with curious neighbors who'd somehow gotten wind of the drama, erupted in a mix of gasps and poorly suppressed snickers. I sat in the back, arms crossed, letting her dig her own grave. And dig she did. For 20 straight minutes, Karen ranted about biological hazards, and emotional distress, even waving a doctor's note claiming she developed PTSD from the traumatic porcine encounter. I later found out the doctor was her yoga instructor's life coach. But her fatal mistake? When she demanded the HOA force me to remove my pigs entirely because they posed a clear and present danger to community values. That's when Old Man Henderson, a retired farmer who'd been silent through 12 years of HOA meetings, suddenly spoke up. "Karen," he drawled, squinting at her like she'd grown a second head. "You do realize this is rural America, right? Them pigs were there for your McMansion's foundation dried." The room went dead silent. Then, like a dam breaking, the backlash hit. Turns out, while Karen had been busy playing suburban royalty, she'd pissed off more people than just me. The Thompson kids admitted they'd been filming her ATV gang tearing up everyone's flower beds for months. The Lopez family brought receipts showing she'd reported their too cultural Dia de los Muertos decorations last fall. Even the HOA board members exchanged looks that said, "Oh crap, we backed the wrong horse." But the coup de grace? When shy, homeschooled Emily Johnson, the 4-H kid who helped me with the pigs, stood up trembling but determined. "Ma'am," she whispered into the microphone, then gained steam, "your ATVs killed my rabbit last month. You ran right over his hutch and never even stopped." The room exploded. Karen's face did this fantastic melt from outrage to panic, like a snowman realizing it's July. By meeting's end, the board wasn't discussing my fines. They were voting on a new rule banning unpermitted ATV use with actual consequences. And Karen? She left through the side door mid-vote, her designer bag clutched to her chest like a shield, the once mighty queen dethroned by the very peasants she'd ignored. The fallout was delicious. Her friends dropped her faster than a hot potato at a vegan potluck. The local Facebook group became a shrine to pig memes, #HogJustice. And me? I became something of a folk hero, the guy who'd done what half the neighborhood had fantasized about for years. Folks started buying my free-range eggs just to hear the full story. But the sweetest moment came a week later, when I found a single, mud-caked riding glove nailed to my barn door like some backwoods trophy. No note. None needed. The message was clear. The war was over. And the pigs? They'd won. Just when I thought the saga was over, when the memes had faded and Karen's name had become shorthand for "don't be that guy" at neighborhood barbecues, fate decided to drop one last act on us like a piano in a cartoon. It started with a certified letter from a law firm. Not a local ambulance chaser either, but one of those sleek downtown outfits with a name like Winthrop, Steele, and Getting Rich. My hands actually shook opening it. Had Karen really lawyered up over pig mud? But the letter wasn't a lawsuit. Oh no. It was a cease and desist demanding I take down my defamatory YouTube video about the incident, which, by the way, had quietly racked up 2.3 million views and turned my channel into a monetized beast. Apparently, Karen's reputation as a community leader, her words, gag, had suffered irreparable harm, and she wanted the video gone or she'd sue for emotional damages and loss of social standing. I nearly choked on my sweet tea reading that last part. Loss of social standing? Lady, the only people still returning your calls are telemarketers and your divorce lawyer. But here's where it got juicy. Instead of panicking, I did 3 things. First, I called my cousin Vinny, actual lawyer, not the movie one. Second, I dug up every piece of evidence, the trespassing footage, the HOA complaints, even security cam clips of Karen keying a Tesla last 4th of July. Long story. Third, and most importantly, I uploaded everything to a new video titled Karen's Final Chapter, the documentary. Then I waited. The internet did what the internet does. Within hours, #PigstyJustice was trending. News outlets picked it up. Country boy outsmarts HOA queen in viral feud. Karen's legal threat became the laughingstock of Reddit, with actual lawyers dissecting why her case had less chance than a snowball in hell. But the twist? The twist came when a producer from one of those reality TV shows about small-town drama slid into my DMs. They wanted to turn the whole thing into a series, HOA Wars. Country versus Karen. I about fell out of my chair. Karen's reaction? Nuclear doesn't begin to cover it. She showed up at my gate, on foot this time, having clearly learned her ATV lesson, screaming about exploitation and invasion of privacy. The irony was thicker than the mud on her old boots. I just hit record on my phone and smiled. "Karen," I said, real slow like I was explaining algebra to a golden retriever, "you sued me for telling the truth. Now America wants to hear more. That's not my fault. That's capitalism, baby." The way her face crumpled? Art. Picasso level. She spun on her heel, nearly eating gravel in the process, and vanished into what I can only assume is a life of bitter obscurity, her name forever etched in the annals of petty internet history. As for me, let's just say the pigs got a fancy new barn from the YouTube revenue. The HOA rewrote their bylaws to exclude frivolous complaints, and I've got a standing offer to host Judge Judy if she ever does rural episodes. The moral? Don't start wars you can't win, especially not with someone who owns a backhoe, a YouTube account, and a grudge the size of Texas. And if you do, well, make sure your lawyer's better than your writing skills. Months after the dust settled, or more accurately, after the pig slop dried, the ripple effects of the Great Karen War continued to reshape our little corner of the world in ways nobody could have predicted. Let's start with the obvious. Karen moved. Not just to a different neighborhood, but a whole different state, Arizona, according to the UPS guy who handled her forwarding mail. Rumor has it she tried to sue the HOA there before even closing on her new house, something about the cactus arrangement, violating her sightlines. Some people never learn. Meanwhile, her old McMansion sat empty for weeks, the for sale sign out front slowly being reclaimed by weeds, poetic justice, if you ask me, until a young family from California bought it, vegan hippies who turned the lawn into a pollinator garden and asked to borrow my pigs for natural fertilizer. Irony's a beautiful thing, but the real shocker? I became the unofficial mayor of the neighborhood. Not officially, of course, but try telling that to the folks who started showing up at my gate with casseroles and zoning disputes. The HOA board, now mostly made up of sensible folks who'd survived Karen's reign, actually apologized and rewrote the bylaws to exclude frivolous complaints, aka the Karen Clause. They even approved my proposal to turn part of the old ATV trail into a community petting zoo, complete with Bessie the pig as star attraction. The kids love her. The YouTube channel? Exploded. Turns out, people can't get enough of small-town justice served with a side of sass. I hired Emily, the 4-H kid whose rabbit Karen killed, to help run it. She's got a killer eye for editing and way more patience for fan mail than I do. We even got sponsored by a tractor company. Me. A guy who once got kicked out of Tractor Supply for arguing about hog feed prices. As for the pigs, living their best lives. Bessie got featured in the local paper, From Mud to Fame, the pig who toppled a tyrant, and the piglets born that spring all got named after internet memes. Karen's Revenge, Cease and Desist, #Justice. They're basically local celebrities, with tourists stopping by for selfies. And that reality TV offer? We're in development, which in Hollywood terms means a bunch of guys in loafers keep flying out to brainstorm while eating all my barbecue. I don't care if it ever airs. The per diem alone pays for the pig's organic feed. But here's the kicker. The twist nobody saw coming. Last month, I got a letter. From Karen. No lawyer letterhead this time. Just plain paper with shaky handwriting. She didn't apologize, of course not, but she did admit something shocking. I watched her videos. All of them. Said she'd been reflecting. Even weirder? She's now running an anti-HOA TikTok channel in Arizona, ranting about government overreach. The hypocrisy should sting, but honestly, I kinda respect the grift. Somewhere along the way, Karen became self-aware. Or maybe she just found a new crowd to manipulate. Either way, the cycle continues. And me? I'm just the guy with the pigs, the platform, and a story that still makes folks howl with laughter. Oh, and that original Pigsty Revenge video? Currently at 8.7 million views. Karen's cease and desist letter is framed above my desk. The ultimate trophy. Just when I thought the Karen saga had reached its happily ever after, life threw a plot twist so wild even my pigs stopped mid-wallowing to pay attention. It started with a luxury SUV, the kind that costs more than my barn and all its inhabitants combined, rolling up my driveway one Tuesday morning, kicking up gravel like it owned the place. The door opened, and out stepped a woman who could only be described as Karen Prime. Same icy blonde bob, same pursed lip expression of someone perpetually smelling expired milk, but with an extra layer of something terrifying: generational entitlement. "You must be the young man who humiliated my daughter," she announced, adjusting her diamond-studded sunglasses like she was a Marvel villain revealing her true form. I'll admit it, my first instinct was to grab a pitchfork. My second? To hit record on my phone. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that lightning does strike twice, and this woman was a walking conductor rod of drama. Turns out, Karen's mom, let's call her Diane because that's the name she snarled when I asked, was a retired corporate lawyer from Connecticut with a vendetta and time on her hands. She'd flown in specifically to audit the situation after Karen's mental breakdown, her words, over the pigsty incident. And by audit, she meant storming into the HOA office demanding all records of my violations, interrogating my neighbors about my character, and even filing a FOIA request for my property taxes. The woman treated suburban warfare like a Fortune 500 merger. But here's where it got interesting. Diane severely underestimated small-town solidarity. The more she pushed, the more the community rallied. Old man Henderson forgot how to work the copier when she asked for HOA minutes. The Thompson teens accidentally directed her to a feral cat colony instead of my house, and the local diner served her decaf for a week before she caught on. The showdown came at the next HOA meeting, packed to the fire code limit with folks who'd come for the show. Diane strode in with a leather-bound portfolio and a PowerPoint titled Systemic Accountability Failures. She clicked to the first slide, a pixelated screenshot of my YouTube thumbnail circled in red. "This," she declared, "is cyberbullying masquerading as entertainment." The room erupted. Before I could even respond, Emily, now my fiery 17-year-old production assistant, stood up shaking but determined. "Ma'am," she said, voice steadying, "your daughter killed my rabbit." The gasp from the crowd could have powered a wind turbine. Diane blinked, thrown off script for the first time in her life. Then came the coup de grace. Bessie the pig's new fan club, a group of kindergartners who'd visited the petting zoo, presented Diane with a handmade piggy appreciation certificate covered in glitter. "Bessie's nice," one tiny girl insisted, shoving it into Diane's manicure hands. The room held its breath as corporate lawyer Diane, destroyer of boardrooms, stared down at a glue stick masterpiece signed by 20 sticky fingers. Something in her face twitched. And that's when the miracle happened. Diane laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a full-bodied, snorting guffaw that made her pearls shake. "Oh, for God's sake," she muttered, tossing her presentation aside. "I told Karen not to buy property near livestock." Turns out, Diane had been against Karen's move to the sticks from day one. She'd only come to fix things out of motherly obligation, but even she couldn't deny the poetic justice of it all. By meeting's end, she'd bought everyone drinks at the VFW hall and, get this, subscribe to my channel. "Someone's got to keep you out of legal trouble," she said, handing me her card with free consultation scribbled on the back. The epilogue? Diane now comments on every video. As a legal professional, I must advise, hilarious. Karen's anti-HOA TikTok mysteriously got a surge of subscribers from Connecticut IP addresses. And me? I've got a new segment called Karen Court, where Diane and I roast ridiculous HOA complaints sent by viewers. The pigs? Unbothered. Magnificent. Still rolling in their fame, and the occasional organic snack from Diane's care packages. Some stories don't end. They just level up. You know how they say karma's a boomerang? Well, mine came back disguised as a 300-pound alpaca named Sirloin. Yes, really, who showed up in my pumpkin patch one October morning like some kind of fleecy, avenging angel. At first, I thought the sleep deprivation was getting to me, thanks to newborn piglets keeping me up all night. But no. There he stood, munching on my prize-winning Atlantic giants with the casual arrogance of a creature who knew exactly how much trouble he was worth. Turns out, Sirloin belonged to none other than Karen's former best friend, Jessica, who'd moved into the neighborhood 6 months after Karen's grand exit and, plot twist, hated her guts. She stole my souffle recipe and passed it off as her own at the 2018 Country Club potluck, Jessica hissed when she came to retrieve sirloin, as if this explained everything. And thus began the weirdest feud in our neighborhood's history. Not man versus Karen, not even pig versus ATV, but alpaca versus the ghosts of pettiness past. Sirloin wasn't just any alpaca, he was a trained therapy animal with a TikTok following bigger than mine, which, okay, hurt a little. Jessica, in a move that proved the apple didn't fall far from the drama tree, had been strategically bringing him to HOA meetings to calm tensions, except Sirloin had two settings: Zen meditation guide and chaos incarnate. One minute, he'd be letting toddlers braid his fur. The next, he'd be spitting directly into the board president's coffee. Jessica always acted shocked, but the glint in her eye screamed, "I know exactly what I'm doing." When the HOA tried to ban livestock from meetings, Jessica pulled out a 27-page ADA loophole and a note from Sirloin's emotional support human, her words. The board folded faster than a cheap lawn chair. But the real fireworks started when Sirloin somehow got loose every time Jessica had a grievance, which, coincidentally, always aligned with my vendettas. Rude new neighbor blocking my tractor with his Tesla? Sirloin took a mud bath against the driver's side door. City council trying to restrict farm stands? Sirloin accidentally trampled their petition table at the farmer's market. And when Diane, yes, that Diane, came to visit and made an offhand comment about alpacas being glorified lawn ornaments, Sirloin waited until her rental car was just out of warranty, then sat on the hood. The dent perfectly matched his fuzzy butt. Jessica swore it was an accident. The security footage, which I may have set to mission impossible music before uploading, suggested otherwise. The climax came at Halloween, when Sirloin, dressed as a very unconvincing unicorn, led a parade of neighborhood kids past the house of the new HOA president, a Karen light named Brenda who hated fun. What happened next lives in infamy. Whether it was the sugar rush or divine intervention, Sirloin broke formation, charged Brenda's pristine no trespassing, lined yard, and, in front of 40 witnesses, took a dump directly on her for $100, her scream, inflatable black cat. The video went viral before the alpaca even ambled back to the parade. Brenda tried to press charges. The police laughed. And Jessica? She handed out alpaca-shaped cookies at the next meeting, while Sirloin stared Brenda down with the smugness of a creature who'd won at life. In the end, Brenda resigned, for personal reasons. The HOA officially banned itself from regulating therapy animals, and I gained a chaotic ally in Jessica, who, it turns out, had been plotting against Karen years before I showed up. "You were just my pawn," she joked over cider in my barn. I didn't even care. Because Sirloin? He befriended Bessie. They now share a pasture, a TikTok account, at Alpaca Pig Pals, and what I suspect is an unspoken pact to keep this town just weird enough to scare off the next Karen. Some legacies aren't about revenge. They're about the friends and unstable livestock we make along the way. It all started with a bet. A stupid, glorious bet made at 2 a.m. after one too many homemade apple ciders with Jessica. The kind of bet that sounds brilliant when you're tipsy and terrifying when you're sober. "I'll bet you $50 and a bale of hay," Jessica slurred, pointing at Bessie snoring in the corner, "that my alpaca can outmaneuver your pig in an obstacle course." Now, any sensible person would have laughed it off. But between the cider fumes and Sirloin staring at me with those creepy, knowing eyes, I heard myself say, "Only if we add moving vehicles." That's how we found ourselves at dawn in Old Man Henderson's hayfield, jury-rigging a stolen golf cart, borrowed indefinitely from the HOA's community use shed, into the world's sketchiest livestock agility course, complete with a kiddie pool full of molasses as the finish line. What could go wrong? Everything. Everything could go wrong. Sirloin took to the golf cart like he was born to drive, which, given his previous antics, maybe he was. He hopped onto the seat like a fuzzy NASCAR pro, gripping the wheel with his weird alpaca lips while Jessica duct-taped a carrot to the gas pedal. Bessie, meanwhile, needed convincing. It took 3 buckets of slop and me strapping a GoPro to her head for first pig POV footage before she lumbered aboard. The rules were simple. Navigate the hay bales, don't flip the cart, and for the love of God, don't alert the neighbors. We forgot one tiny detail. Alpacas and pigs don't understand reverse. The second Jessica yelled go, Sirloin stomped on the carrot, sending the golf cart lurching forward like a drunk bumper car. Bessie, startled but ever the professional, responded by sitting directly on the horn, which let out a pathetic meep that somehow summoned every dog in a 3-mile radius. What followed was pure chaos. Sirloin zigzagging through the course like he was in Mad Max, Bessie's jowls flapping in the wind like pink flags of defiance, and the cart's battery dying spectacularly halfway through the molasses pool, leaving them stranded in a sticky, squealing mess. That's when the cops showed up. Not because of the noise, oh no. Because Brenda, yes, that Brenda, had been patrolling for code violations and caught the whole thing on her Ring camera. Her 911 call, later obtained via FOIA request, is a masterpiece of Karenary. There's a farm animal joyride in progress, and I think they're under the influence. Officer Jenkins, who'd responded to the original pigsty incident, took one look at the scene. Jessica and me covered in molasses trying to push a golf cart with a pig and alpaca still aboard, Sirloin now chewing on Brenda's phone cord, and sighed so deep I felt it in my soul. Y'all got 5 minutes to disappear before I have to ask questions. We made it 4. The fallout was legendary. Brenda tried to get us banned from the annual fall festival, but the committee voted us in as entertainment. Extreme Livestock Golf Cart Demolition Derby sold out in minutes. The HOA demanded we return the golf cart. Eventually, we added alpaca-sized seatbelts first. And the video? Oh, the video, set to yakety sax, became my most viewed upload ever. Even Diane sent a congratulatory email. For the record, this constitutes attractive nuisance. Also, bravo. But the real victory? Brenda moving last month. The for sale sign said quiet neighborhood. The Zillow listing conveniently left out the part about warring livestock. And Bessie and Sirloin? They're now a package deal for birthday parties. Turns out, revenge tastes best when it's served with molasses and a side of alpaca side-eye.